Once upon a time, there was a young man named Sam who lived in a small town. Sam wasn't any different from you or me. He had dreams, he had goals, and he also had fears. His biggest fear? Public speaking. Every time he thought about standing in front of a crowd, his heart would start racing, his palms would get sweaty, and his mind would go blank. Even the thought of it would make him feel queasy. It's not that Sam lacked ideas or things to say. In fact, he was full of interesting thoughts and insights, but the fear of being judged or embarrassing himself was overwhelming. This fear held him back, not only from speaking but also from exploring his full potential. He would avoid situations that required him to speak up, missing opportunities to express himself and share his ideas. One day, Sam was invited to his cousin's wedding. It was a joyous event, filled with laughter and love, and everyone was having a wonderful time. But as the night went on, Sam's uncle approached him and asked if he could say a few words about the bride and groom. Sam froze. He felt his chest tighten and his pulse quicken. "No, I can't," he stammered, trying to find a polite way to decline. But his uncle insisted, saying that Sam was family and his words would mean a lot. There was no way out. Sam had to face his fear. So he took a deep breath, stood up, and tried to calm himself as he walked to the front of the room. He looked out at the crowd, all eyes on him, waiting for him to speak. His mind went blank. But then he remembered the laughter and love he had witnessed just moments before, and he decided to speak from his heart. He began sharing a few simple stories about his cousin and his bride, stories he knew well and stories that came naturally to him. As he spoke, he noticed something strange. The crowd wasn't judging him. They were smiling, nodding, and even laughing along with him. The fear that had felt so powerful just moments before began to fade away. Sam realized something important that day. Fear had been in his head, creating a wall between him and what he wanted to achieve. This experience sparked something in Sam. For years, he had allowed fear to control his choices, to hold him back. He knew he couldn't let that happen anymore. So he made a decision. He was going to face his fear of public speaking head-on, no matter how uncomfortable it made him feel. The next day, Sam started researching public speaking. He read books, watched videos, and learned techniques to manage his anxiety. But he knew that knowledge alone wasn't enough. He needed to put it into practice. So he joined a local public speaking club where members gave small speeches and offered each other feedback. This was a big step for Sam. Just walking into that room made him feel nervous, but he reminded himself of his goal and the experience at the wedding. He remembered the feeling of connecting with others through his words. The first time he stood up to speak in front of the club, the familiar feelings of fear came rushing back. His hands were shaking, and he could hear his voice quiver. But he pushed through, speaking slowly, focusing on one sentence at a time. He stumbled and made mistakes, but he didn't stop. After he finished, he looked around, expecting to see disappointment on people's faces. But instead, they clapped, and a few even came up to him afterward to say they appreciated his courage. Week after week, Sam returned to the club, pushing himself out of his comfort zone. Each time, the fear was still there, but it started to feel a little less overwhelming. He learned to manage his nerves, to speak in a calm and collected way, and to focus on the message he wanted to share, rather than his fear of judgment. Slowly but surely, Sam found his voice. As Sam became more comfortable with speaking, he noticed changes in other parts of his life. He became more confident at work, where he had often stayed quiet in meetings, afraid to share his ideas. Now he was contributing, and his colleagues were noticing. His confidence was spilling over, helping him to connect with people on a deeper level and pursue new opportunities. Sam felt a sense of freedom he hadn't known before, simply because he had dared to face his fear. Months later, Sam's public speaking club held a competition. Members were encouraged to give a speech in front of a larger audience, with a panel of judges. Sam hesitated, feeling the familiar grip of fear, but something inside him had changed. He no longer saw fear as an enemy, but as a challenge he could overcome. So he signed up. On the day of the competition, Sam felt a mix of excitement and nerves. He stood backstage, taking deep breaths, remembering all he had learned. When his name was called, he walked out, stood at the podium, and looked at the crowd. Instead of focusing on his anxiety, he focused on the faces in the audience. He reminded himself that they were here to listen, not to judge. And with that, he began. As he spoke, Sam felt a sense of peace. He was sharing his story, connecting with others in a way he had always dreamed of. The words flowed, and he saw people nodding, smiling, even wiping away a tear or two. When he finished, the crowd erupted into applause, and Sam felt a rush of pride. He had done it. He had faced his fear, and he had won. Afterward, people came up to congratulate him, sharing how his story had inspired them. Sam realized that his journey wasn't just about overcoming his fear of public speaking. It was about finding the courage to be himself, to share his voice, and to trust that others would listen. Sam's story is a reminder that fear is a natural part of life. We all have fears, some big, some small, that hold us back. But the path to overcoming fear isn't about making it disappear. It's about learning to live with it and taking that first step, no matter how small it may be. Each step, no matter how difficult, brings us closer to who we're meant to be. And who knows, your story, like Sam's, may inspire someone else to take their own first step. So if you have a fear that's holding you back, remember this. You don't have to be fearless to be brave. You just have to be willing to take the first step, even if it's shaky, even if it's uncertain.